What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So, a little while ago, there was that entire situation where someone discovered a Nintendo PlayStation in their attic, and it was crazy stuff as we watched them get the thing up and running, and eventually auctioned it off for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, it turns out that wasn't the only Nintendo PlayStation out there in existence, and in fact, there was a bit of a shocking post that was made online recently, and we're going to take a look at that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about the Nintendo 64 4K system that, well, Analog has delayed theirs, and it turns out a new challenger is approaching, and they may have the system to watch. Then we'll also be talking about Circana with their report that was posted for the month of February, as it does talk about the hardware and the consoles, but also just how well Monster Hunter Wilds did in its initial launch. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or the link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with Game Informer, who last year had shut down. Staff was being laid off pretty much immediately overnight, and it was a whole thing there, as it seemed that GameStop, who owned Game Informer, was just moving on from it. Well, after months and months, it turns out they might be making a return. Well, we can see this post up on their official account, kind of a video here hinting at them making a return, and then flashing up the date March 25th. So next week, I guess there'll be some kind of announcement. And I was looking at this thinking, okay, are they just gonna bring back like a small crew of people and do something there, maybe with like a digital archive of all their past issues that's been floated? But then looking through it, it seems like many of the former staff were retweeting this and posting it up on other forms of social media and kind of pointing at this like, hey, keep an eye out for what we have to announce. And it's also possible, as people have mentioned, that maybe the Game Informer name and everything there was sold off and somebody's going to try to revive it. It's hard to say, but certainly something to keep an eye out for next week to see if there's good news just in general for the Game Informer brand, everything. Maybe it does make a return. Also, we had a really cool indie announcement for Skate Story, as that's been in development for a bit now, and it's supposed to be coming out later on this year for PC. But it turns out it's also coming to PlayStation, as it was featured on PlayStation Blog, which we can see here, where it says, skate through 9 layers of hell and battle larger-than-life bosses as you attempt to free yourself from the devil's contract that has been placed upon you. As the Glass Skater story progresses, you'll dive further into the depths of the underworld. You won't be alone in your journey, as a whole cast of characters is rooting for you. And the video here that they've shown, like, we've seen this game, they've shown gameplay and stuff, and it looks awesome. Like, all the tricks, the thing is fun. Yes, it's sort of like it's a linear style from point A to point B, the way they have it set up here. But like, all the tricks that you do look super impactful when you land them. It has sort of that, again, that skate kind of perspective from the bottom up there. And I just think the overall art style, everything about it is really, really interesting looking. So yeah, I've been keeping an eye on this for a while here and there, and I'm going to be picking this one up immediately when it releases, and it seems like, hey, it'll be on PS5 and PC later this year, launching together. So definitely keep an eye out for Skate Story. Looks like a bit more of a unique twist on the whole skateboarding genre. Oh, and we have some good news for Plants vs. Zombies fans out there. As you can see, this was posted up. This is from Gamatsu, saying that Plants vs. Zombies Reload has been rated. That's for PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, PC, iOS, and Android in Brazil. Also, the year 2009 is mentioned here in the listing, which technically would point back, of course, to when the original released way back then. At this point, I was never a big Plants vs. Zombies person. I know it was popular because people would come in and buy it, I think on the Xbox 360 quite a bit. Actually, like, there was a physical copy, if I remember right, of that. And people would buy it, or just points to then get it, like buy it on the marketplace for Xbox back when they just did like the points cards, from what I remember. Either way though, that was it was popular back then, but it was something that kind of I just missed completely. Kind of similar to Minecraft, I feel like, for myself in that time period. But hey, it was popular. It seems like people are very excited for this Reloaded thing. Apparently microtransactions played a big role in that first one, and some are concerned that could also play a big role here. And technically it's EA, so you can't really rule that out, or really with any of these big publishers. But hey, we'll see when they're ready to announce it. But the fact that it's been rated tells me that we're not too far out. Maybe this is something that they set up over the next month or two, or even wait till, say, Summer Game Fest to make the announcement. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Nintendo PlayStation, which, as I mentioned, it was years ago at this point, when someone discovered that they had one in their attic. And it wasn't necessarily they discovered it, they knew it was there because they came across a Reddit post kind of talking about the history between what happened with Sony and Nintendo, which has been talked about over and over and over again, rehashing the deal between them, and then Nintendo kind of breaking away from it at the last minute. And then we got, of course, the PlayStation, and the rest is history. Well, there was a collaborative system, we'll say, that was built and was actually a prototype that was out there. And a person on Reddit said, yeah, I have that. It's up in my attic. I've seen it. No one believed them until they brought it down and took a picture, posted it, and it was crazy online at that point. Everyone was scrambling, trying to get the thing working. They had like a cartridge for it. It was a lot of fun. Well, they had auctioned it off, of course, for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think it was just north of $300,000, if I'm not mistaken, for that. And we thought that was the only one in existence until the other day, actually. And this post went kind of unnoticed for a while, even myself included, until people started to kind of retweet it. And then I was tagged by it for this. And we'll take a look. This over on Twitter X. This is from Julian or Kantan Japan, saying, I never thought I'd see something so rare, but today I actually got to fondle a Nintendo PlayStation. The last one in existence was believed to have sold at auction for $300,000. Turns out the ex-CEO of Sony CEA has one in his closet. Ken Kutaragi, top bloke, signed my PS1 too. You know what? If anyone out there would have this, it would probably be Ken Kutaragi, the father of PlayStation, of course. And look at these pictures. Kantan Japan did a great job here documenting this whole thing with these images, because this is a clean looking Sony PlayStation, or Nintendo PlayStation, sorry. You see the Sony, then PlayStation, you have the Super Nintendo, or I guess technically at that time, like Super Famicom controllers on the front there. Just really, really impressive stuff. And I mean, it looks super clean. It looks, I don't want to say mint, but it's like, looks new. Whereas the one that we've seen images of before, I mean, it was definitely sitting in an attic, we'll say, and wasn't exactly taken care of like it was a Nintendo PlayStation. The only, I guess, disappointing thing here, I would have pressed him like, yo, can we turn this thing on? Can we get a game drop? What do you know about all that? I mean, I know he was just really like meeting up with him here. He got his PlayStation signed. Like, it was all very nice of Ken Kutaragi to do. But I'd have had so many questions about this Nintendo PlayStation, especially seeing it in person, be able to pick it up and flip it around and check it out. But to me, this brings up the question once again, are we sure there aren't more of these things sitting in attics somewhere, or warehouses, or in offices at Sony, or even Nintendo? Because for a while, again, we thought there was just one, and that's just because we only had one show up online and somebody actually pull it out of their attic. So it does make me wonder if more of these will start to pop up over time. Just the fact that we know that there's at least two in existence, you feel like there's got to be a couple more that were being prototyped, maybe not looking exactly like this, just in different conditions, shapes, or stages of development. But I feel like we're going to get a couple more of these dropped. I mean, think about it this way. This whole time, all this was going on, Ken Kutaragi just had one apparently in his closet, and I mean, maybe it just doesn't go online much at all and never noticed it, and someone was like, oh, do you have that? Yeah, it's in my closet. Why? You want to check it out? I'll pray. Like, it's not even a big deal to him. But also, again, the father of PlayStation, he's probably seen it all there at Sony, and this was probably just another day at the office for him. Next up, let's talk about the Nintendo 64 4K, which we went over the delay that happened with the analog 3D and how they're now pushing for maybe July to ship out. But there have just still been a lot of questions around just the functionality of this device, because they haven't shown like games actually playing on it in a more, I'll say, informal setting where they just sit down and turn it on and play games. Even if they just record, set up the camera, point at the TV, system, cartridge, and go, that would be enough for a lot of people. We're still kind of waiting on that, and the delay, again, sort of makes sense considering it's almost the end of March, and they were aiming to ship out these pre-orders. Well, now it looks like a new challenger has appeared, and this is one you want to keep an eye on. So we can see this posted up. This is over on Twitter X from Palmer Lucky, who says, this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. There's obviously a big Matrix reference here, but take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in the Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. M64, or just like kind of the ModRetro, I guess, logo, the M64. But it's interesting because somebody replied and said, I just bought the Analog 3D. He says, never too late to change your mind. Now, GameStop has also partnered with them, and you can actually buy their Game Boy, their Chromatic, which we'll talk about here in a second. But they also responded saying, get M or get out, again, referencing Nintendo 64, get in or get out. And then obviously in the background, there's the shape of the very recognizable Nintendo 64 controller. So interesting stuff here. And I do wonder if we're just going to start seeing more and more of these FPGA Nintendo 64 systems pop up here in the next year or two, as it seems like that's kind of the big push right now with ModRetro, Analog doing this. Now, if you're unfamiliar with ModRetro, they did the Chromatic Game Boy. I do have one, and I've been checking it out here and there. I'd say it's definitely something that's geared towards enthusiasts for like the Game Boy community. Okay, so there's a lot of quality stuff here, and the only thing is it's $200. And I know it's not going to be for everyone. They're going to say, well, why not buy the Analog Pocket or whatever, because you can play way more systems. This is just legitimately for Game Boy. But if you really want a good Game Boy, I mean, this is kind of it. It also leans into the idea of like AA batteries and stuff, so all the nostalgia factors there. The other wrinkle with this, though, is they developed like unique titles for the Game Boy. They shipped it with its own like unique version of Tetris. So I also wonder if they're going to create like original games for the N64, this N64 4K, this FPGA system. If that's going to be the case as well, are they going to remake the controller? Because technically for the Game Boy, they did that with the buttons and the D-pad. Well, they kind of need that for the Game Boy, but are these all things they're going to tackle? I'm so curious to follow along with this, and also, just competition in this space is great. So, pricing will be a whole thing, I'm sure, but based on the Chromatic, I'm not going to say it's going to be cheap. Maybe they'll be able to keep it within the realm of it just being reasonable, like probably $200 to $300 somewhere in there. But if it's high quality, it works well, I think you could find an audience here in that N64 community, especially with how emulation is like, it's not bad, it's also not great, and then also video out for the N64 is not great right now, so you have to do a lot, I would say, to get it up to what would be somewhat acceptable on a larger display. Like, I have the Ultra HDMI, most people don't have that. There are other things you can do, but it still isn't quite to that level. Maybe this is something that can overcome that, and all of a sudden you could buy a Nintendo 64 that hooks up well to a big flat screen, and it could play all of your cartridges, and maybe brand new titles in the box and everything. So definitely keep an eye on this, and of course, I'll keep you guys updated as we go along. Next up, let's talk about the Circana sales results for the month of February. These would be sales that are tracked month to month in the US specifically, and here it'll kind of give us an idea as to how trends are, and in this case, also how Monster Hunter Wilds did out of the gate, since it came out right at the end of February. It's not like they have a whole month necessarily to go on, but the results are pretty impressive here, as you'd figured. So let's take a look first, though we can see this. This is all posted up over on Installbase Forum. Did a very good rundown here with the charts and everything, but say February video game hardware spending fell by 25% when compared to a year ago to $256 million. This is the lowest February total for video game hardware spending since the $184 million reached in February 2020. PlayStation 5 was once again the best-selling hardware platform of the month across both units and dollars. Xbox Series ranked second in both measures, which of course means the Switch was in third place. None of this is surprising though. So if you go back to February of 2020, what were we doing at that time? We were all kind of hanging out waiting for the end of the year when the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series came out. And also we were 3 years, just about to be 3 years into the Switch's lifespan. So while that was maybe peaking, we had the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One pretty much on its way out. So kind of a reverse here, where while the PS5 seems to be still selling well, the Switch, I'd say it's kind of run its course, and we're also waiting for the Switch 2. So this makes sense to kind of then compare it to February 2020. We'll see how things go when the Switch 2 does eventually release, and we'll be back here next year in February to see if maybe that has a bit of a spike compared to this year. Now, they go on to say that after each platform's first 52 months in the market, PlayStation 5 unit sales exceeded PlayStation 4's sales pace by 7%, while Xbox Series now trails Xbox One by 19%. Again, very important to mention, this is specifically in the US, as globally, the PlayStation 5 is still tracking behind the PlayStation 4. However, this technically, we're waiting for numbers from Sony for their next financial meeting, and maybe they'll be able to give us an indication if it's catching up globally, or if it's just kind of staying firm. I think most people believe that GTA 6 will probably propel the PlayStation 5 ahead of the PS4 when you have it launch line, but Of course, we need to see if that game actually ends up coming out this year. As for game sales, we can see the top 10 here with Monster Hunter Wilds, of course, topping the charts. No surprise there. Then we have at number 2, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. And Civilization 7, which, hey, it's cool to see Civilization. Wow, in the third slot there. PGA Tour 2K25, then NBA 2K25. Call of Duty Black Ops 6 falls actually from 1 all the way down to 6. Not too surprising, though. That is it's a game that came out technically last year, really. I mean, months ago. But here you go with probably, I'd say, starting to sputter out in terms of its sales. Avowed, there at 7. Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii at 8. Grand Theft Auto 5 at 9. And then Madden NFL 25 to round out the top 10. As for Monster Hunter Wilds, it was the best-selling video game of February, instantly becoming the best-selling title of 2025 thus far. Launch month dollar sales of Monster Hunter Wilds more than doubled the total Monster Hunter Rise achieved during its March 2021 debut. Monster Hunter Wilds was the best-selling game of February across each of the PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam ecosystems, with Steam accounting for more than half of the title's total dollar sales. So think about that for a minute. PC really is getting into that prominent role, one for Capcom, but just in general for the industry now, to where, I'm sorry, for Capcom, you can't turn up with that sort of an effort for optimization on that port. They've got to get this figured out, because we saw it with Dragon's Dogma 2 with the RE engine in like this open world setting. It just hasn't been great for PCs in general. Like the frame rate, the frame stuttering, the CPU usage, it's been all over the place. So they definitely need to clean that up, especially since PC right now seems to be one of the major supporting factors, one of the big pillars now for Capcom. So when the next Resident Evil shows up, which there's been a lot of rumors around 9 getting announced sometime this year, they need to make sure that PC version is in tip-top shape, because seems like that's going to be a big audience they're going to be selling to support, of course, their business going forward. But overall, not surprising where Monster Hunter Wilds is, but wow, what a success for Capcom. And seems like this is a game that's going to continue selling going forward, and most likely, I figure, will eventually be at that number 1 spot on their Platinum Hits, the board that they have where they show off all the sales, and I don't think it's going to take very long for it to get there. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about something that is still ongoing, has to do with Hollow Knight Silksong, and basically, whenever it's mentioned by any of these platform holders or companies, there's a big spike online of interaction, people wondering if this is finally it. Is the game getting announced and then released? Well, the latest here we have is from Microsoft, as we can see over on their Xbox Wire post, where they say, looking ahead, our lineup is incredible with upcoming games like Clear Obscure Expedition 33, Descenders Next, and FBC Firebreak to play across the whole Xbox universe, and of course, Hollow Knight Silksong 2. I mean, you know what? If I wanted to get eyes on any of the articles or posts that I make on Xbox Wire, I would put Hollow Knight Silksong in every single one, because it works every time. People go, whoa, hold on, Hollow Knight Silksong got mentioned here. Is it coming out this year? Is it getting shadow dropped? What's going on? That happens every time if it's just mentioned. So the pressure is insane right now for Team Cherry to deliver. The game's been missing for so long, it just disappeared. And look, it's very clear that Microsoft obviously is backing this. It's going into Game Pass, so I assume they got a fair amount of cash infusion for this game for development, and they realized that they didn't have to put it out at that time. They could bring it back in and let it cook a bit longer. And I'm hoping that when they do turn up with it, it's legitimately an impressive thing, and we go, okay, I understand why it's been so long. Because if they show up and it doesn't meet this, it's gonna be tough anyway, but like a wild expectations people have for this game, to where it is in like that mythical state now. Whenever we see an indie showcase or even just a regular Nintendo Direct state of play, whatever, it's like Hollow Knight Silksong is in the chat constantly on the right side as these different trailers are playing. So here's hoping, not only for Hollow Knight's sake or Team Cherry's sake, the entire industry's sake, that this thing gets announced and it gets that release date soon. You know what'd be fun is if it really did shadow drop, because that might actually break the internet. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, which is actually flowing nicely from Hollow Knight Silksong, where I ask, will Hollow Knight Silksong release in 2025? 81% say no. Wow. 19% say yes. You know what? It's poised for the shadow drop. I'm going with it now, and they should do this, because it would be a lot of fun if they showed up to one of these developer. So obviously Microsoft is putting money behind this thing again with Game Pass. It'd be a lot of fun if they had plans to put it as one of the mystery things in a developer direct, and it's right at the end, And then they go, oh yeah, here's Hollow Knight Silksong. Team Cherry's part of the developer direct. Let's see what they have going on. They go through the whole thing. The game looks incredible. It's like, oh wow, okay, great. When can we buy this? They're like, oh yeah, right now it's actually available. You can go play it. It's in Game Pass, by the way, right now too. That would be great. Like I said, it'd be pandemonium on the internet. And I would love to see that. So yeah, if they want to go with a real marketing strategy there, just drop it and see what happens. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Karma, who says, I love the personal nostalgic stories you share. Gives me a big hit of nostalgia from my childhood doing the same things. Yeah, sometimes I think about the story. I'm like about to tell him, like, I wonder, am I like going too far back? Do I sound too old when I say that there were cartridges in plastic cases with these things called manuals? But then I also realize I haven't talked much about like the PC side. If I really talked about like the personal computer or PC side, things would get real old. Like I'm talking like we go back to and I know the people out there are even technically older, right? They're thinking about like way back in the day, but I'm thinking of like games, Number Muncher. That's a bit, anyone out there remember that? Respect. On the 5 1/4 inch floppy. I think it was at school. We had like an Apple II or something. You pop it in and there's Number Muncher. Or like they had like one with words where you had to rhyme them and say, look up Number Muncher right now. Look at the graphics, and then come back here and I might look like an old man yelling at clouds. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to check in on the 3DS scene right now in 2025 and why I think it's an awesome time to pick one up and share a few tricks as to maybe how you can get one a bit cheaper. I'll leave that right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.